Yeah, can you? Perfect. Oh, okay, so we're recording. All right, it's Metagov. All right, now, so we're here. Let's keep it going. Where were we? NetADAO, we've got proposals coming up live. We've got Cohado. We've got everything going on here. Val, take us back to where we were.
Okay, we were doing introductions and we introduced NetADAO because it was their first time. And if anyone else wants to introduce themselves, we have a moment here for folks to come off and introduce, but most are familiar faces here. I don't know, um, David or A, if either of you want to unmute and introduce yourselves, you're welcome to, or else type your intro in chat.
Great. And we can also do it in the chat. And I wanna take this opportunity to just open it up a little bit. Like, so we're here. We've got a bunch of people here. It's really nice to see everyone here, actually. I like seeing all of the people that are here. Hi, Daniel, Nathan. Wow. Okay, cool. So we can play a game. And maybe at this point, it's like good to just kind of pass it over to Brian because I think Brian can kind of like get us into the headspace, like why we're here and what we're doing. And then Paulo can kind of like actually like ground us in the principles, and then we can kind of work our way through that. I'm gonna pass it over to Brian.
All right, I'll keep it super short just because I think Pal's got a lot of good stuff to say that's gonna really get us going here. So the reason I thought it'd be good overlap between Palo and Metagov community is really looking at how people come together to get things done and what kind of structures allow that to happen. And governance is a way of achieving that. I think there's social systems, and that's something Palo has done in practice, and had a direct impact. So I think that's what we're all trying to do. So I thought it would be good to hear about how he's done that and kind of the lessons he's taken from doing that. So that's the overlap I see. Um,
Can you set it up
yeah,
just a little more, just a little more like you went through the policy crafter, you put together, you were engaging with Steve, you were thinking about subsidiarity, you were thinking about kind of making some traction and ground with the kind of abstract way Nico was thinking about digital governance, and you were finding a way of connecting into the work that Paolo is doing in Baltimore and actually grounding it in a kind of space, in a kind of site, in a kind of cooperativism. I wonder if we can kind of just like think, like kind of work our way into this through that process a little bit.
yeah. I mean, we were talking about it at the beginning of that. We were talking about um, games and exploit them as like social systems. Me, you, and Steve at the beginning of that community call, and then jumped into. And I had mentioned Paolo and Cohado.
Right.
And then when we jumped into the idea of of thinking of proposals, I was like, oh well, I think it just naturally was like, yeah, well, that's a good one because it's it's why it came up organically in conversation. And
Perfect. I love
it's
that. Nice, short,
yeah,
sweet, and just like that. It can be just that quick, Paulo.
Awesome. Uh, are you ready for me?
Oh, very ready. Go. Here's
Awesome. It is a delight to be here with this community. Brian's given me a little bit of a sense of it, and you know, I've seen like this thread from back in the day. Of people trying to figure out communes and co-ops and things like that to leaping to Occupy, where people were really trying to figure out some different ways to look at how we be with each other. in, I would say, righteous relationship, but also shared power and in a multi gender, multi ethnic, multi economic reality that we live in. And so I just want to first say thank you for Brian and thank you for Senti allowing me to put a log on this fire, as it were, and to talk a little bit about how I've been thinking about this work really for I probably my entire life, in a sense. I'm a Black kid who grew up in a white suburb outside of Philly, living in Baltimore now, and so I've experienced, this kind of this tension of dominance versus maybe synergy and maybe emergence throughout my whole life. So I'm going to jump into some slides, and we're also going to do some interactivity. As you may see in the corner of my screen, there's the head of a guitar. I am a jazz musician in addition to the other things that I do, and so we're going to be doing a little jamming. It has some structure as all music does, but it also has some fluidity and flexibility, and hope you guys are willing to do some playing in a variety of different forms. So let me see if I can share my screen and bring up a little presentation for us. Can everyone see that?
Yes, beautiful.
Awesome. And now let me go to full screen. Okay, so this is the Cohado and Metagov moment. And I'll just give you a little bit of background on me. I've spent 30 plus years as an entrepreneur. 20 of those years have been in community organizing, largely here in Baltimore, but supporting community organizing and systems evolution throughout the country in a variety of spaces, from small community organizations to Chase Bank, helping them figure some stuff out. So in very broad amount of spaces in government, et cetera. And in the last 10 years, I guess I realized doing this work and seeing these economic wealth gaps that in a capitalist culture, and as a Black man, my eyes have seen the disparity, and it's so visible now in front of us what's going on. And I guess I would say my goal became to get as many people their 40 acres and a mule as I could in a space that is very difficult to do that given the current structure of things. And so I moved really into entrepreneurial support and ecosystem building about 10 years ago, working with young people to help them figure out how to bring their ideas, which were plentiful, into reality, and then moved into working with adults, and now work nationally with folks like the Startup Champions Network, Right to Start, Forward Cities, and a number of folks are in this space with the motivation of in a capitalist culture, which I think we need to evolve beyond, that moving to ownership of our own is kind of the last stop on the Underground Railroad for folks who have been owned. So that gives you a little bit of my personal connectivity to this. And I'm going to jump right in and see if we can figure out how to do this. This is where the jamming starts. So a lot of my work is anchored in the Zulu culture. I have no idea why. I've never been to the continent. I've never been to South Africa, where the Zulu culture was indigenous. And But I learned from a whole bunch of different sources a lot of things that relate to this culture and its paradigm. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But as we're beginning this process, I will teach you a Zulu greeting. And the Zulu greeting is Sawubona. Sawubona. Can we say that?
Bona. Sawubona.
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 Yes.
Sawubona.
And Sawubona does not have a real English translation as a word, which is interesting. But it means I see you. And it's not like I see you like, hey, how you doing? It's literally I see who you are. And the response generally for Sawubona when somebody says greets you in this way is Sakona, which means I am here. And this exchange to me is the two keys to getting anything done as humans. We have to see each other and really open to who the others are that we are with. And we have to be present in order to do that. I think it's asking me to okay the recording, but I think I did that. We'll see. So if we can be present and we can see the others, then we can get a lot of stuff done that we have not been able to get done. And there's structures that prevent us from seeing each other. So we're going to move right into a practice. So who's in control of the breakouts?
There are many people in control of breakouts.
Okay, so who wants to take the role in this moment? It shouldn't be me.
It should not be you. I see breakout rooms.
Okay, so you want to do that, Senti?
Yep, I can click it.
Okay, awesome. Don't click it yet. So what we're going to do is a very quick activity, and we're literally going to have, I'm going to say, 1 minute and 30 seconds in the space.
Okay, 1 minute.
And we're gonna be in pairs. So we'll put people in just randomized pairs. And so what I'm gonna ask you to do is just be in the space with each other. Don't say a word. Just do your best to see the being in front of you in silence, like literally not even one word, and be with that person. And then we'll come back and we'll re-enter the space and we'll let you talk about that for a little bit. So starting now, randomized pairs, doesn't matter who's with who. And so and then we'll come back and we'll repeat that with a little bit more texture.
Right,
okay.
Sorry, can you just say
Ready when
those
you-
instructions one more time, Paolo? And also, I think your slides, it looks like you're sharing we can still only see the first slide. So I'm guessing you moved on past that.
I think it's okay. Let's go into breakout. We have 17. I'm gonna make 7 breakout rooms. It's gonna automatically do 2 to 2, and then we'll come back and we'll figure out the slides. So
Okay,
1
since
minute.
it's an odd number, you can leave me out if I am one of those 17.
Okay. Great. Yeah, let's see if this works. Okay, 7.
And you
Go.
have, okay, Brian wanted a little instruction. So all you're doing is going into this space and being with each other and doing your best to whatever seeing that other being is in full silence, not interacting, not distracting, just be present for literally 1 minute.
It's the B
Awesome.
protocol.
Thanks for repeating that. Yep.
Okay. All right. It's happening. 1, 2, 3. Open all rooms. Join.
Have we hit the minute mark yet?
I think so.
And I'd like to welcome Binko, who is my partner in Cohado and also a data scientist and genius. So I thought he might connect with you all.
Hi, Pinko.
Awesome. Welcome,
Welcome.
Pico.
He's at a conference right now, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to come on cam. But
Let's see. Close arms.
So I'm assuming I was supposed to be paired with somebody in a room. That's what it sounded like, and it certainly did not happen.
well,
They got out of there real fast.
You had to be. You had to be with yourself, Steve.
Yeah, well, got a lot more practice to that than most people.
I remember the last time I've been on a Zoom call and just been like by myself and expecting to be with somebody.
well,
Anyway.
this is a lot easier in person. we have a little bit more capacity to manage if somebody's standing alone. So apologies, Steve.
Too old a reference.
Everything's closing. 7, 6, 5. Okay. B.
Come back.
B. B.
Beep, beep.
B. B.
What's B?
Beep, beep.
B.
So is everyone back in the space?
Everyone's here, yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not sure if the tech worked for everyone, but if you were paired and you were successful in just being with this other person, without revealing anything about that person, but really talking about yourself, what was your experience in that space? And anyone can pipe in. And I recommend piping in quickly because we don't have a lot of time with each other.
Do some typing. Daniel, did you see anything?
I was actually alone in my breakout group, so I did a silent meditation.
Okay, let's hear. I think that's actually. I think you weren't the only one who was alone. I've done a lot of alone things.
Was it a total fail for everyone?
Lydia said in the
failing
chat
is
that
a
it
great
was socially
opportunity.
awkward.
Hold on, please, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of it. I enjoyed it as like a quiet moment.
Awesome.
Okay.
I think Brian had a thought.
Okay, Brian.
I was just someone had posted in chat, Lydia, that it was socially awkward.
But this is the thing with silence. It's always like that, but it really isn't. It's just like,
So that's a really important question. Like, why? Let's quickly jump into this. Why is it socially awkward to just be with another human being?
I know for me, like, I get anxious about like what I am in relation to that person. It's like all these things start flooding in of like who are we to each other? Like, are we yeah, like you just kind of see yourself and the other person, and it's like trying to just settle into experiencing another life, like another whole world and experience and life. And it's like kind of mind blowing to just experience that. So it feels like it's both, I think, like calming, or it's kind of a challenge of being calming, but it can feel really like whole and human, but also the like flood of anxiety of like, what are we doing here staring at each other? Like, this is so weird. Are we falling in love? Are we like, just like, and anything in between, are we just like colleagues on a work call right now? Are we trying to, co-create something together? Like, I just feel like all the possibilities are open, and therefore, like, it's also, yeah, overwhelming, but also like super kind of peaceful.
I think maybe like because we think a lot about decision making and digital context, like the suspension of making a decision in a digital context is kind of what that silence is underscoring. It's I don't know if other people feel this way, but I sometimes feel as though in digital contexts, I need to be executing, I need to be making decisions, I need to be doing something. Uh, Although I'm quite happy to just not as well. But I wonder if that is like the suspension of decision is like somehow underscored in the digital context that we're in as well, because you have all these moving parts and everything is sort of working, kind of not working, maybe working, interoperating in ways that you don't expect it to. Check, pass.
Yeah, and I would say, having done this activity with hundreds of people, that it's not limited to the digital context, that need to be doing something, not need to be being something.
Totally, totally.
Somebody put in
I'm
the
just
chat.
going in that direction so that because I think that's like the direction that like I don't know, that's my headspace. And I think maybe others here like I don't know, Steve has done a lot of stuff with like thinking about like how attention is shared between people in these contexts. And this really kind of breaks the whole format of like the seminar. It's really it's it's like wait, how does this stuff actually work?
Right. So there's somebody who wrote, it's not the silence in general, it's the silence with a person I don't know. I feel I need the first verbal connection. And that's a common experience. Daniel, did you have something? I see a raised hand.
Yeah, kind of building on Val's point, I heard once that prolonged eye contact ends either in sex or violence, which I think is not always true, but as like where's this going to go? I think there's something to be said for that. I also think that there's something to be said for that being like a very primitive instinct, and there being value in practices encouraging us to kind of like develop past that, basic impulse. Those are kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Only a psychopath will actually kill you while he's talking to you.
Wow. Well, I didn't expect it to go here, but hey, here we are. So let me actually jump in because I know we are somewhat limited on time, and I'll see if I can try sharing and if we actually get the motion. So you see this slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you still see this slide? Do you see this new slide now?
Eyes.
Is it working?
No, I don't see change.
Okay. I'll just do it from the
Okay.
this
No, I see
space.
change now.
Okay.
That
So
works great.
so when we're talking about building community, there's often a struggle around this and the sense of feeling what that community is. And so what's the reason behind the reason? What are we living within that makes it awkward to just be next to each other or with each other or to work together in a parallel rather than hierarchical space? And I would argue that this film tried to answer that, The Matrix, which is that there's a system that we are living in that has a set of rules that are governing interaction and transaction and economy and every aspect of it that's built on a very consistent platform. And back in the day, I was playing dominoes with a friend who's highly, and I don't know if this is a word, but testosteronated, super competitive. Everything that one says is an argument in the context with this guy. The sky is blue. No, the sky isn't blue. Like, it's just that kind of thing. And we were playing dominoes and talking about each other's mamas and cussing each other out for 3 straight hours over the game. And I said, it's the game that's keeping us in this space in this relationship with each other, in this win lose. I don't know if I'm winning unless I know you're losing. And the rules to dominoes is you win by making your opponents waste everything in their hands, and you win relative to their losing, which is the way I would say that the men have sort of organized the planet for the most part in that kind of structure. Very few winners and a lot of folks losing and a lot of folks struggling and suffering. And it's tough to build a community in an environment like that. And so just to look at 2 different archetypes that show up within this space. If one has power, one has resources, one has capital, etc., then one can organize a autocracy or a hierarchical structure, which we've all been a part of, whether that be in school or in businesses or sometimes even in our families. And this structure, the one person or one set of people determine what gets done, and the others are there to fulfill that. And they don't really have much authority to change that or to even interact with each other in a space like that. And so there's a lot of control and dominance in that kind of environment. And it's centralized leadership. It's always top down, but the resources are extracted to the top. So it's this power over dynamic. The other context is what I would call gatekeeping, which is where if you don't have a lot of resources and you don't have this sort of authorized power, then, and you want to feel that sense of control, then you accumulate access to these resources that are needed by the rest of the system. And in order to access those, people have to go through you. So it's the same structure, but it's where you don't have the authority to actually dictate. So you can control and centralize control by being this gatekeeper. And these are 2 very common forms I see in communities that don't have a lot of resources, this gatekeeping a lot. And in other systems, you see this autocratic kind of hierarchical structure. So if we look at some thinkers who have been working on this, Buckminster Fuller, an amazing designer. I was introduced to his work at the age of 6 at that very building he's sitting in front of in Montreal, at the Montreal Expo 67. And it blew my mind. I had never seen anything like a structure like that. And it was a building, and there was even a building inside the building. It just blew my mind about what the notion of building is. And Bucky says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the old model obsolete. And I do think, we spend a lot of time kind of fighting these autocratic dominant systems and not turning. And I think one of the beautiful things about what you all are doing is that you're trying to identify some alternative models that could make these existing toxic world shattering models obsolete. And so that's what I'm engaged in too. And if we look at the model that I'm trying to build out, it's an emergent model and it's a distributed model where you still have individual resources, et cetera, but that you're connected to each other in such a way that the resources can be distributed around this web of connectivity. And the more connected the web is, the faster the resources can move from where they are to where they're needed. And it decentralizes community power. And the key thing is that no one is left hanging and everyone has access as long as they're in relationship to those who are adjacent. And so, you know, as we're looking at new models, it's very helpful to look back on the models that we have, and that in the work I've done in all of these systems, the same model keeps showing up. And so the word Sankofa means let's look backwards to move forward. So let's understand the model that we're in, not to fight against it so that we don't replicate it unintentionally. So I'm going to describe the model as I've seen it in all of these different systems replicated. So the most stable form on the planet is a pyramid. It doesn't move. Egypt tells you that. And if we build our hierarchies in this structure, they become very stable. But in order to maintain power and dominance from the top, you have to divide the top from the bottom. And then you also have to put in a centralized region that distances the top from the bottom, because the bottom has way more beings in. And if it was aggregated, it would threaten the top. And so these centralized structures are put between, if you look at the structure of slavery, then you see the overseers are put between. They're promised the keys to the kingdom, but they can't really access those keys to use them for anything because their role is to distance the top from the bottom. And if you look at the bottom, there is also a similar kind of recreation of this same structure in a fractalized way, all the way down to sort of the particulate level, which means that this thing cannot move. It doesn't change. We see, we know what the resources are at the top. You know, you have capital, and you also have some sense of control, and you also have a clear view because you're at the top of the pyramid and you're not struggling for your day-to-day existence. But there are some things that you don't have, some deficits. Now, if you look at the bottom, we read about what's going on at the bottom every day. You know, we know what the devastation is, but we never talk about the assets at the bottom, and we never talk about the limitations of the top. And if you look at the assets of the bottom, if you don't have enough individually, then you connect up. And if you know, women have been doing this for thousands and thousands and thousands of years by viewing the world from a community view, because it was required for survival, but it was also required to keep the community moving. And if you look at the communities, you know, Bob Marley says, is not the music from the ghetto, because you get this sense of creativity. If you don't have enough and you can't purchase what you need or acquire what you need, you start creating what you need. And so this incredible sense of creativity happens at the bottom. Often that's extracted to create more wealth at the top, but the creativity is anchored in the bottom. And the third thing I would say is that there's a sense of connection to the creative, the creator. And it's a direct connection, because if your community and your creativity still do not allow you to survive and thrive, then you reach beyond what yourself is and what your community is to find connectivity with something beyond that. Whether it's theoretical or if it's actually true, you know, we don't need to get into the theory of religion, but that is very present in these cultures. And those things are not found at the top of the pyramid. You don't find a sense of community. It's an individualistic perspective. You don't find the same level of creativity because you have to maintain a certain set of behaviors in order to remain in that space. And you also don't get that sense of connectivity, direct connectivity to something beyond ourselves because we're so individually focused at the top of the pyramid. Now, if we look at the new model is really only steps away from the existing model. And this new model looks at this in a very different way. So if we look at this model, the margins, the most intensified margins are only one step away. If we can bring them together, we create a well or a sense of wellness and connectivity. And if we distribute this model in a way that's lateral and not hierarchical, it means we can distribute the sense of connectivity, responsibility, but also distribute the resources in a very different way. And this creates the possibility for a whole new way of designing our communities and what has been referred to as governance, but I really see it as stewardship. How do we steward this whole planet in a way that creates this kind of model? And we call this model Cohado. So what is Cohado? Fundamentally, it's a shift in our thinking. And it's just as each of those points that seem so divergent and far away, we're only literally one step from the middle. This thought to me is just a tipping point on the same idea. We view in this current model that we're existing in, self as an individual idea. But if we can move the notion of self from being the small definition of one, meaning me, to the big definition of one, meaning oneness, that we are all one, that we are all connected beings in this singular ecosystem called planet Earth, then that shift in thinking can shift the way we behave within this system. And it's movement from ecosystem building to ecosystem building. How do we get out of this singular, it's about me and making myself feel good and measuring myself against how other people are doing to know that I am winning? And so this is all anchored in this philosophy that is from the Zulu people called Ubuntu. You guys might know the operating system, but this is a global potential operating system. And there's no English translation for this word, which also makes you go, And this word literally means that we are responsible for each other's well-being. Now that feels like a heavy load. If I'm responsible for y'all, that's a lot of work, right? But if you all are also responsible for me, it distributes that work into many hands, making light work. And so that we can actually achieve anything if we shift to this new way of thinking. Some thinkers that have talked about how to do this, Audre Lorde, one of my favorite thinkers, it's not our differences that divide us. It's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And we see this playing out certainly on the national scale and also the international scale, like literally right now where difference is being rejected. And I would say that's the intensity of it now, is the kind of death throes of the dinosaur of this old way of being. Or Bell Hooks, who said, beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation, by each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. And this is really about, looking at the Venn diagram of individuals, the most complex Venn diagram, and not saying let's focus on where we agree and where where our viewpoints coincide, but really pushing out to the wings of the butterfly so that we can really understand each other's differences, which is really what gives rise to something new. And so, Cohado is this kind of structure. And I'm not going to go through the levels of Cohado now from the there's a mythic story because I want to honor our time and I see where we are. But what I would say is critical is that the zero is the everythingness, right? Everything is everything. And then there are these stages of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are the everythingness revealed through time and space. And if we look at the 7 as the result of that, and the 0 question is, what am I? And the 7 is the answer to that, which is the 0 is the white light, the 1 through 6 is all of that being bounced through the prism or prison of time and space. And the answer is, this is what we are, which is this spectacular spectrum of all possibilities. And these are the essences of the game Cohado. This is what an end game looks like, which is literally based on that pattern that I discovered in doing this diversity work. And it's dominoes, excuse me, two-sided pieces, hexagonal pieces that each bear all of the possible combinations of these 7 symbols. And your work to play Cohado is that your goal is to connect the pieces that you have, working as components, not opponents, bringing your pieces to the table, connecting them with like symbols. 3 or more connected creates an asset. It's not 2, because you could take 1 piece and there's 2. It means there has to be a bridge, this third thing, to create an asset. And if you leave something hanging, it counts as a negative number. So the rule set is create assets for the community as represented by the circle of players and eliminate waste of any kind by not letting anyone or anything hang. And the best you can do that then results in a collective score that you share, what we call the COE or coefficient. How coefficient have we been with our resources? How connected have we been with each other? And we have used this in a regenerative cycle model where 0 is what's the question you're asking. The 1 is what are the individual's viewpoint of that question. The 2 is the dialogue to understand those differences in perspective. The 3 is what emerges out of bringing those 2 different spaces or multiple different spaces together. The 4 is the structure you're going to use to implement it. The 5 is actually getting there with your hands and doing the work. The 6 is then sharing and opening it to the community so that it can move in and out of the space. And the 7 is the reflective process. But the real goal of this is this inner circle, which is that we lead with respect, which means I see you. And then we move into transparency, which means I am here, I am present, I am with you, and I am willing to be vulnerable and put my pieces into the table and into the work. You then move into reciprocity, which gets born out of the expressing and the sharing and understanding allows for these new things to emerge. And that results in trust, which means we are okay working because we know that we all belong to this beloved community that we're forming. And I wish we had more time because I could share how we anchored this, but I'll just give you an image of, so we created a network, and Binko, who's on this call, was really instrumental in bringing the resources to Baltimore to execute this model. And we began with a stewardship council, folks who were from various aspects of the startup ecosystem that we were working in. And we brought them together and we found out the connective tissue between them. and that was really understanding who's connected and how they're connected. And then we went out into the community to talk to businesses literally and find out what they needed. This is smack in the middle of COVID. Those folks were brought together in a cohort. Those cohorts met. We've done 4 cohorts of 60 businesses, and they're all still connected. Their 6 was doing a collective event after 4 years of working with each other to bring, called the Butterfly Rising, to bring the community into this space of this network that was functioning synergistically and beautifully. And the impact of this when we started, 80% of Black businesses in Baltimore failed within 18 months. And after 4 years with these 60 businesses, only 1 moved out of the community and is not functioning anymore. And so we have 98% retention of these businesses during this 4-year period. And so that's really the work that we're trying to get done. How do we seed this collective culture? We're launching a Cohado challenge, an 8-week program, which is actually beginning soon, to train folks in this model and have them come together as a cohort and then apply it to their own communities. And we'll use the Cohado tool itself, physical tool. Each person that gets that will get one of these to bring to their communities. And we'll also use the Cohado virtual tool, which we fully beta tested and have brought out. So I'm gonna end there with a animation that we created, which is how the Black butterfly works, and it really is how Cohado works.
Okay, wow, this animation is doing all of it. Thank you. We're gonna come up on 2.5 minutes here. So I don't think we'll really have time for questions, but I think so great to see this. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for putting this in the environment where we can tangibly feel the digital space that we're in. Can't hear me. Can people hear me now?
Yeah. It was because of the music of the video.
Okay, that's actually good. I'm very happy to be like talked over by music. I was just saying thank you for presenting with us today. We won't really have time for questions, but there was some discussion that Brian had raised of possibly kind of interacting with the virtual game at some point, or kind of taking some of the discussions that we've had here and kind of trying to actually like incorporate them into a community call or something like that. So I just want to kind of plant that seed for if people in this call found this interesting, then you can head over to the community channel in the Slack and you can have that discussion there to see if there's some kind of potential to engage there.
Yeah, well, I actually proposed, Sent, that we do what we normally do, which is after the seminar, start a thread in the Metagov seminar channel to discuss. And I think there were some interesting questions. Paulo will find them interesting in the chat, and he probably didn't get a chance to see them, but there were conversations about Russian oligarch communities in the chat. So I would love to bring those questions over to Slack and continue the conversation there. And then yes to doing maybe a play test of Cohado or something else in, a week or two, like we can schedule it and then invite folks back into another space. Cause yeah, I think there's so much here, and I would love to have more time to kind of debrief and discuss as a community a lot of these ideas.
Awesome. And I don't know if I have some time to chill for a little bit. If there are a couple of folks that want to stay on and chop it up, if that's possible. If not, then yes, in addition to all of the other things. So
yeah. Normally what we do is we stop the recording after the hour, and so we can stay on and chop it and kind of like dice it out, hash it.